And so they asked the question, can we trust the Bible? Because that's essentially what we've been asking in this.
At least the majority of the
For the most part,
yeah.
Can we trust God? Can we trust the Bible? Can we trust that the Bible accurately portrays who God is by the people that should know him, that he's entrusted his word to, all those things. So can the Bible be trusted? Ehrman, as well as other critics, answer with a resounding no. Not shocking there. A lot of people would disagree with that. They insist that the Bible's difficulties are so extensive that skepticism is the only reasonable conclusion for an unbiased scholar.
Yeah.
I'd like to meet an unbiased scholar first, but okay. However, this is simply not the case. This is not to say that there aren't difficulties in the Bible, such as apparent chronological differences and theological tensions, which, hey, we've covered some of those in other books. Yeah. And there have been those things written about for thousands of years.
That's right.
They've been known. They've been discussed.
Yeah.
Early church fathers have talked about it. And you can get whole books just based on one thing, or the cleansing of the temple, or you get a book of the Bible difficulties, the best of them, and get them in short form or long form, or look at them in the Greek.
Best of the difficulties.
Yeah, something like that.
The most difficult of the difficulties.
Right. But as one scholar noted more than 25 years ago, the difficulties raised by the biblical phenomena are, on the whole, a good deal less intractable than is sometimes suggested. So usually it's this is the death knell for Christianity. This is the thing that proves them wrong. Or here's a historical fact that we know the Hittites didn't exist, and then suddenly we find the entire Hittite army and their entire civilization.
That's right. Pontius Pilate didn't exist. Oh, here we have an inscription, and it mentions Pontius Pilate.
Right.
Whoops. Right. Once again. So nevertheless, the church, to a large part, has not sufficiently taken note of and passed down the historical and theological knowledge that builds the foundations for reasonable faith, right? The church has kind of allowed this to kind of slip by and under the rug and that sort of thing, at least, in the past, right?
Yeah, I think James White has said in his show on the Dividing Line that he has to make this stuff known because he deals with people in debates that bring this stuff up, and it's just, why isn't it not known? It's because we kind of refuse to want to bring the Bible's true nature to life. We want that nice underpinning of, it was kind of handed down through mystery and it was perfectly preserved, and we don't need to look at the nuance, the messiness of history. If we all just have this idea that our authors talk about, that Bart Ehrman sometimes has of God has to do it this way. So if you're writing the Bible and you write John 3:16, you said, for Jesus so loved the world, and your hand would stop, and there would be a mystery of
or you'd automatically write Jesus, but then it would turn into God.
right. Yeah. And so we just don't see that. And I think the church wants to not get into that because they almost want to speak to the lowest common denominator. They don't want to explain it. They don't want people's faith to be shaken. They don't want to create a ruckus. They just want to kind of teach, and we all want to feel good in the sermon, or let's talk about sin or what Jesus does for us. But all that stuff, we can kind of push it away.
Right.
That's for you to do in your own time. Which there's something to be said about that, but also we need to be honest about how we got the Bible, where it comes from, the messy parts of history, the fun parts of history.
And so into this environment, Ehrman has entered, right? He's found an audience among past and present churchgoers. Some of them skeptics, many of whom are interested, shocked, and left wondering why they've never learned any of this in their churches. Right?
Yeah. And so, despite the anxiety that Ehrman's rhetoric can produce, however, in some ways he has done us all a favor. He has focused discussions on topics to which everyday Christians and pastors have given inadequate attention for too long. Yeah. And so,
so he's kind of forced the issue for us.
Yeah, right? He's made it popular, which is shocking, but it's almost like you can only have that type of fanfare from a skeptical point of view. So, this might be a God using imperfect people for perfect ways.
That's right. Yeah. Good. So, for instance, Ehrman frequently argues heresy has an equal claim as Christianity to orthodoxy in the early church, right? In making this argument, he notes that our New Testament canon could have easily included various Gnostic texts, right? So, why did we choose these? Well, the strongest, most powerful one kind of thing, right? However, as was pointed out by authors in Chapter 5, Ehrman, in Did Jesus Exist, writes, and here's a quote from this book, we have nothing to suggest that the beliefs embraced by later Gnostic Christians were present in first century rural Palestine. And so the Gnostic sayings of Jesus found in such Gnostic Gospels as the Gospel of Philip or the Gospel of Mary almost certainly do not go back to Jesus himself, but were placed on his lips by his later Gnostic followers, right?
Okay.
And so he admits it.
Yeah, right.
Wow, So yes, these books these Gnostic books, like the Gospel of Philip or whatever, they don't go back to Jesus. They're not what he said. They're different than what he said. Okay, then why should we accept them, right? And that's why we don't accept them, right?
And so Ehrman tends to have this two point of view thing that he brings up in one, but not the other, or he says, the New Testament is the worst thing we could possibly have because those aren't the words of Jesus. They happen so far later. But then you ask him, well, where do we get the life of Jesus? Where's the best evidence from it? Well, from the New Testament
of course.
documents.
Yeah.
Okay, well, which is it? It can't be both. It seems like one's in the exclusion of the other.
Yeah, so, this kind of statement is helpful to his argument in a book, for instance, like Did Jesus Exist?
Right.
As he sets out to defend the historicity of Jesus. But it's contradictory to his views on early Christianity expressed in other places, right? And so you really can't have it both ways.
It doesn't seem like it. It seems like the two fall in contradictory paths. So while clearly many of his core beliefs have changed since his fundamentalist days, Ehrman's expectations for what the Bible must be in order for it to be considered inspired have apparently not changed all that much. And so this is kind of what we talk about when we talk about the fundamentalist view on the Christian side is, it's almost a Mormon type view of the golden plates handed down or like a direct download beamed down from the Holy Spirit to the apostles, and they sat up straighter and wrote in the exact way that
automatons,
he
robots,
it, right? And so we just don't see that, and we see actually a better way of preserving or having confidence that the words that were meant for us to read today have been preserved and channeled appropriately. So in fact, it appears Ehrman has set the bar intentionally so high that no one will ever be able to satisfy his demands for sufficient evidence for faith. And we see this in some debates that he has where, he'll talk about that he won't believe that Mark wrote Mark unless Mark signed 3 different documents for it and all this stuff. It's like, well, you don't take that for the life of Caesar.
Prick with blood
or anything. The Shroud of Turin, something like that, For example, despite the New Testament manuscript evidence being far superior to any work of antiquity, that is not enough for Ehrman. And so that's if you had that on the life of Caesar, if you had Caesar's own, hey, I'm going to pay you to follow me around and write all my pontifical sayings, then that would be a treasure trove for historians. They would love that. What were you thinking when you had this battle where you were outnumbered 1-5 and you somehow lived and won the day and then crossed the Rubicon? What were you thinking as you did that? They would love that.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Here we have the same exact thing, and it's scattered to the winds because it has supernatural claims to it or origins from it.
Right. And so, despite the superiority of these books, he fails to accept them. Also, despite the core theological truths that run through the writings of the various authors of the New Testament and the legitimate diversity within these books, he sees theological contradictions, right? And yet, there are core truths. They all relate back to the New Testament. They're talking about Jesus and what he had to say. So in answering Ehrman's objections to faith in the God and Jesus revealed in the Bible, we have observed in this particular text here numerous reasons to believe. from the vast and early manuscript evidence to the remarkable unity amid the diverse New Testament authors and the various genres.
Right.
Ehrman's objections, it seems, once explored, point us to evidence in support of Scripture. Right. So he's, as they have said, done us a favor.
Right. He says, like, if we can show that the New Testament authors used scribes, then my argument goes away. Well, it seems to be both internal and externally valid, and so it seems like his argument will go away, right?
Yeah.
No. And it's not like Ehrman doesn't know these and doesn't know this, and he hasn't worked with some of the best textual scholars in the world in his heyday.
And he is one of them.
Right,
frankly, yes.
Absolutely. You cannot knock him for his lack of credentials or experience, but there's just something of a roadblock. Maybe a Romans 1 roadblock.